And I should introduce myself first. My name is Peter Newell. I'm a distinguished solution engineer with Salesforce, and in particular with the Tableau CRM team, or TCRM as we refer to it in shorthand. And I mean, you may realize that what's happened in terms of the merger between Salesforce and Tableau is that the Tableau CRM team, smaller though it was, has actually become part of the overall Tableau team. Okay, so my initial product alignment would have been very much to the Tableau TCRM, but now I have coverage also of the broader Tableau product set. Now, we just admit a new entrant there. So there will be some forward-looking statements or indications of product direction in this presentation. So please keep in mind the forward-looking statement. As you can see, it's a great read. So if you ever had the time, do treat yourself to it. I don't, to be honest, I kind of have an agenda, but it's more a series of themes that I want to focus on in looking at the whole area of adoption and how, you can approach different, shall we say, groups of users when it comes to analytics. I want to look at Tableau first and just level set on all the wonderful things that you can do with a viz. But then go into the idea that basically, despite all the wonderful things that you can do with a viz, you still sometimes get challenges with user adoption, right? The idea that you can lead a horse to the dashboard, but they may not necessarily want to use it. We'll take a quick look at what is coming in terms of predictions in Tableau. You may already have seen some of this, but what's going to happen in release 2021 4.1 is that's going to be expanded even further. And you can kind of take it as an indication of the way the product set is going to go generally in terms of this sort of integration and interoperability. We'll look at the idea of more questions, more answers, and more delivery, as opposed to the idea of self-service. I mean, self-service is still going to continue because it's Tableau after all. But we'll look at more options for the ways in which analytics can be delivered to you. And particularly when it comes to prediction use cases, what I want to be able to give you some guidance on as partners is if you do have customers who are interested in the whole idea of predictions, either within Tableau or within Salesforce, how you can go about defining a use case, right? Because there's a really quite particular way to do it over and above a typical analytics use case. And then we'll take a look particularly at the idea of actionable analytics. Now, loads of BI or analytics vendors will say their analytics are actionable. But what we have with TCRM is the ability to action those analytics directly within the application. And once we can do that, we can actually automate those actions as well. And there's a few myths that might be running around that I'd like to address. So any questions on that agenda before I go on? I'll take it that silence is golden and go on to the next slide. So here is an overview of the Tableau product set as it now stands. As I introduced myself, I belong if I belong in a particular box there, I belong in on the far right-hand side and Tableau CRM and the idea of native Salesforce analytics. However, such is the nature of the better together pitch or value prop that all those other areas come under our remit as well. And we, in respect of those, we quite frequently have to be generalists. And hopefully that's going to become clear during this presentation also. The idea that we are now making available facilities within the Tableau UI, which are effectively coming from the Salesforce infrastructure. Because this is what happens with predictions. Predictions are surfaced within the Tableau UI via physical structures, logical structures that are actually on the TCRM platform. So yeah, I just wanted to go back to the regular Tableau mission statement. And I say regular, that's the wrong word, but the traditional Tableau mission statement, because that is not going to change. this is the type of analytics in which Tableau absolutely excels. I mean, it's still the market leader, it's still the thought leader. The idea of visual self-service analytics, the idea that we add value to data by visualizing it in ways that you possibly couldn't, you quite probably couldn't do with any other tool. Okay, and nowhere can you find better examples of this, I think, than if you go to Tableau Public. And even when sort of you present a montage of the various contents that you can find there on a slide like this, it is still possible, I think, even when you're looking at a slide as cluttered as this, to look at various dashboards and find them immediately striking visually and know what they are trying to say. One example that stands out for me when I go to Tableau Public is actually this one. It's called Ebb and Flow. And in some respects, it may break some dashboarding rules in that it's not immediately clear what it's actually saying. But what it actually is it's an analysis over time of various music genres that have appeared in the Billboard Top 100. Okay, now again, looking at it initially, you wonder how the author managed to put together a dashboard which actually somewhat resembles a human intestine. Now, I dare say there was some jiggery-pokery going on here with time and trending charts, what have you. But it just shows the affinity that Tableau has with visualizations, how it leads in terms of visualizations, and where so much of the focus with Tableau is it's almost on art, we're appealing to a creative mindset, the idea that we can shed new light on data by visualizing it in different ways. Okay, and yet, now we as analytics people are quickly excited, I think, and addicted by a development and analysis process like the one offered by Tableau. Okay. But it is still the case that sometimes users don't adopt. We can put the finest, most interactive, most visual dashboards in front of some users, and for whatever reasons, and these can be entirely valid reasons, they may not adopt. Okay. In line with that, I'd ask you to consider these personas. There's just a few sort of examples of them here, right? You can think of the salesperson whose focus is on ABC, always be closing. They're closers, they want deals. They don't really have time to do analysis, however attractive or exciting that might be in a Tableau dashboard. The same with an under pressure service agent who is under pressure to close cases as quickly as possible, who wants one and done. Yeah, again, not the type of user who typically has a lot of time to look at dashboards. If I need to sort of catch up on what their general performance is. And so to partners who are heavily engaged with a core organization and just want to get the information from the core organization that has allowed them to go on and do the rest of their business. And so what these individuals or groups have in common is that they're time starved, right? Self-service, if truth be told, the typical strength of Tableau is not really for them. These are user groups who typically want answers rather than being able to ask more questions of their data. Okay, and so when we're doing digital transformation or data transformation, transforming companies to become data-driven organizations, then there is, there's often pressure on the training effort and the enablement effort to encourage these user groups to use dashboards more than they would normally. But you can get pushback. Okay? You can get pushback in terms of, those users don't have the inclination or the time to be able to do that kind of self-service analysis. And so what that leads us to is a situation where we do, rather than providing them the means to answer more questions of their data, provide them with the means, the answers that they want and where they want them. Okay. And so this is one thing that you're going to see in the upcoming release of Tableau in 2021.1. And you may already have seen the idea of predictions being surfaced within the Tableau UI, but that's going to be expanded further still. And we're making a few distinctions here in terms of the type of extensions that you can actually run. Okay. What we've seen so far are typically, what we've seen up until now is a dashboard extension that allows you to either use a worksheet or a collection of parameters within Tableau to pass values to a model in Salesforce. Okay. What you will also have available in 2021.1 is the ability to do scripting within a created calculation in the same way, for instance, that you can do it right now when interfacing to R or Python. Okay, so you can call out to a model. Now, I'll give you an indication of this in a minute. And in effect, the fourth way of doing it, so there's basically two ways that you can do it within a dashboard, i.e. either on the basis of a worksheet or a parameter. You've got the analytics extension, and what you will be able to do in data prep is you'll have a scoring node which will call out to Salesforce, and on the basis of each record that's passed through it, actually score that record outside of Salesforce and make it available to Tableau. Sorry, is there a question there? No? Okay. Okay. So just to give you a quick indication of something, for instance, that you'll see within Salesforce and that you can subsequently embed within your Tableau calculations. Let's go here. I'm actually in Analytics Studio here within TCRM. And I have a number of models there, one of which in particular is subscription probability. And if I go to that model now, what I will find if I go to settings, right? If I've decided that this is the model that I want to make available to Tableau and call it via a calculated field, via a script in a calculated field, you'll see here that there is an option to create a Tableau table calculation. Okay, and what that will effectively do is it will generate for me the Tableau syntax that I need to be able to call out to the model from Tableau. Okay, so what you will see here are the columns gives me the fields obviously that are available within the model, and the ID there is the ID, the Salesforce ID of the actual physical model that is being called from Tableau. Okay, more people coming in there. So what you will be able to do is you'll be able to copy that to the clipboard and then just paste it into a calculation within Tableau. Okay. Oh, you only see the PowerPoint. Thank you, Carolina. I know what's happened. I beg your pardon. Now, Carolina, is that okay? Thank you.
We still are seeing the PowerPoint. Excuse me, Peter.
Oh, you. All right, bear with me. Thank you for that. Now, can you see that now?
Yeah, thank you,
we can see.
Thank you, Carolina. Sorry, everyone. So, as I say, the size of the call is such that if anything like that appears confusing, just come off mute rather than chat. Okay. I'm still getting people joining. So let's just go back and look at that again, because if I was happily talking over that without being aware that you're actually seeing it. Where I am right now is I'm within Analytics Studio. I'm looking at all the models that I have deployed. Okay. And there's quite a bit tucked away here in terms of the kinds of things that you can do with model now, like automated refresh and what have you. But if I go to settings, right here over on the right-hand side, if I've elected this, if I want this to be the model that I'm subsequently going to call from a Tableau calculation, I can actually create the syntax for it here. And then simply copy and paste this to Tableau. But this is an indication of the kinds of things that are going to become slicker still. I mean, what we are working on is that part of the model UI will be manageable. You will be able to manage models through the Tableau interface. Okay, rather than what you have to do at the moment, which is use two different work areas, which is Analytics Studio and Tableau as well. Now, when I switch desktops here, can you please confirm to me that you're still seeing slides? Carolina or somebody else, can you tell me that you're still seeing the slides?
We are seeing Tableau Analytics Studio still.
Still?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, so it seems the desktops aren't working on what I'm going to do then is this. Bear with me. Okay, can you see that now?
Not yet.
You see the slides?
Not yet.
I see Tableau CRM.
All right, just bear with me, people. I think it is that my second screen isn't projecting properly. Now, can you see the Salesforce user interface there?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay, and again, and again, and again. Okay, great. So, all right, back to these slides. Now, I won't go into full presentation mode here to so that we don't get that experience again. So, now, if you've not seen the Tableau CRM experience within Salesforce, there are differences, significant differences, if truth be told, between the approach that you will see there and the approach that you see with the Tableau dashboard. Okay, and in summary, that difference is that in TCRM we very much start with the app, not the dashboard, but with the app. And what we mean by that is we start with the basic user experience, whether it's a sales rep, whether it's a service agent, whether it's a marketing technician or what have you. And the kind of experience that you will get there, and I'll show this to you very shortly, is that analytics is, we typically used to use the word embedded, but we now use the word native. The analytics are native to Salesforce and are an integral part of the user experience. Okay. From a technical point of view, bear in mind that we are actually pulling data from a number of different data sources, not just core Salesforce, but the analytics data store as well. And the kind of experience that users can expect, there are notifications, analytics, which can be fully interactive. They can be as interactive as much as the user wants, embedded within the UI, and also predictions and the ability to take action. Okay. And what I'll try and do is show you a demo now, which is going to pick up on that and pick up on this idea of picking the right product based on the right use case. Because this is such an important slide. We refer to it internally sometimes as well, a very expensive slide. Let me put it that way. The reason for that being is that lots of people contributed to the actual thinking behind this. But I think the thinking becomes clearer once you see that actual experience in place. Okay. So more people joining the call, bear with me. So if we'll go here, okay, and this is actually based on a live customer, a customer who are in fact one of the biggest users of predictions on the Salesforce platform, and it's a company in South Africa whose business is auctioning cars. And the cars are write-offs, they're insurance write-offs. They partner with the insurance companies. Pay the insurance companies a small fees for cars which are considered write-offs, and then they auction them off. Okay, and there are various factors in play in terms of getting the maximum return on a line item. Now, what I'm seeing here, if I go in as somebody who's actually organizing the auctions, and they organize auctions at various locations around South Africa, there is the idea here of the amount of return that they actually get on a car against the predicted return. Okay, and the idea that they want to be able to optimize that. What we want to look at in that respect then is, let's have a look at the idea of vehicles that are to be auctioned. Okay, so here I can see the various insurers, and what I'm particularly interested in is vehicles which have been unassigned, i.e. they haven't yet been assigned to a particular auction location. And as such, if I drill down on one of those sections, say for Samtan, and this experience that you see here, this faceting experience is inherent in the way Tableau CRM works. It's inherent in the actual data set structure that it uses. And then it means that everything that I see down here in terms of vehicles belongs to Samtan Insurance Company, but is as yet unassigned. It's not been assigned to an auction location, and it's my job as an auction organizer to actually do that. So the experience is that if I go to any one of the cards here and say, okay, I want to action it in some way, I have the ability via the action framework to be able to go to that record. And this is where we get into the idea of an insight that is delivered to a user. We're still getting them to understand their data and what have you, but an insight that is delivered to the user and then allows them to action that. Okay, so we carry on with the idea of analytics which are embedded in the user experience, but at the same time, the prediction pane on the right-hand side here is telling me ways that I can optimize the return on this particular piece of business. And the thing to bear in mind here is that every single record that I can look at has this same experience. It has been compared in terms of a particular business outcome, and here that business outcome is potential predicted return against every other piece of business that I've done. And so the experience then is, if it says, look, I can actually improve the predicted return on this car if I set the location to Johannesburg. I can improve it by 10%. So let's see what happens if I actually do that. So I go over to my location. I'll set it to Johannesburg and I'll save it away. Now, what happens when I save it away is that the adjusted record, the amended record, is passed to the Salesforce model, right? And it's reassessed against that model in the light of the changes that I made. And it's rescored, right? So the end result is that I'm getting guidance on every single piece of business. I'm getting an answer, a prediction on every single piece of business that I look at that allows me, enables me to optimize that piece of business. Okay. So this is what we mean by delivery. I didn't have to do any sort of self-service or exploration or anything like that, but I'm acting here as a user who might typically in Tableau have a viewer license. But I'm enabled from an action point of view to get just the answers that I want and to be able to answer those actions. Any questions on that? Because that's a kind of a fundamental concept whenever we're using predictions.
Is it view customizable, or you can change something if you want?
It's
For example,
entirely
color?
custom. Yeah, that's a great question. It's sorry, you're talking about the aesthetics here and actually what text you see and what have you?
Not only the aesthetics, only when you choose one customer or model of the car, and then you want to highlight something else. Can you do it at Tableau CRM or not?
Yes, you can. Now, but there's an important thing to bear in mind here, okay? And I'll come on to this later, is that whenever it shows improvements, it will only give you improvements and recommendations in the light of factors within the model that you've deemed to be actionable. And if you think about it, that's entirely logical. It's not much use giving any user recommendations in the light of things that they can't change about a particular piece of business. So for instance, if we use that comparison here, things about this piece of business that I can't change are, for instance, the make and model of the car. Sure, they have a bearing on the piece of business, but I can't change them. I can, however, change the location at which I auction it. Is that clear?
Yeah, it's absolutely clear. Thank you, Peter.
Okay. So, oh, more people trying to get in.
I do.
So, does that, and this is a key question for you, does that shed more light on what we mean by analytics within the CRM workflow? There, I was using analytics which were within my CRM workflow. I organize auctions, I go in, I see some analytics which tell me, okay, these are the cars that are unassigned, right? I can go to those cars, and for each single one of those cars that I look at, it gives me advice and suggestions on how I can optimize that piece of business. So the answers are being delivered to me. I don't have to ask more questions of my data. My data has been processed and analyzed in such a way that the answers are actually delivered to me. Now, hopefully that has shed some more light on that. So let's go to the next slide here, because this is just kind of the case study from this particular customer. In fact, they used other parts of the Einstein product set. They actually used one of the development APIs, the Vision API, to actually assess automatically the level of damage on a car before they did the kind of processing that I was showing you there in terms of sort of optimizing the logistics behind it and what have you. But if you like, when I was dealing with them, the thing that really set them apart, or not set them apart, but what set them up for success was the clarity that they had about what they wanted their predictions to do. It wasn't an interest in the technology for its own sake, but being able to think, okay, we've got a technology here which we can harness in respect of a particular business outcome. And I always still remember when I asked the COO, what is the business outcome that you want to optimize? He came back and said, return on a line item. Okay. And it's being able to assess those kind of use cases that I want to come on to here, because basically what this slide does is it goes into more detail about, you know, the use cases, the suitable use cases for Tableau versus Tableau CRM. And I hope you can see them here. There's already a strong indication of them here. What Tableau is fantastic at doing is allowing business analysts and users to do analysis where they're not even sure what the question is, let alone the answer. This idea of being able to explore for unknown unknowns and ask more questions of your data. Okay. And that is a different approach from the one that we've just seen in Tableau CRM, which is where there is some clarity already about what the business outcome should be and the kind of analytics or recommendations that you get back from those. Okay. And so as such, I want to dig into this idea of use cases and enabling you to recognize when you have a use case that lends itself to this kind of thinking. Now, what I've taken here are the use cases from that last slide, the use cases for Tableau CRM. And I think if you look at these, and there's a kind of a rhetorical question here about whether or not these are actually use cases, you would consider them to be use cases. You know, they sound pretty well fleshed out. If an AE or a partner came to me with these, I would say, well, we've got the basis for a further discussion about what the customer actually wants to do. I mean, so for instance, I need visibility into sales pipeline trends and predictive forecasting. Entirely valid use case. Okay. However, it's not enough to be able to define a use case for predictions. Okay. It will give you an introduction to the conversation, but it's not enough to actually define the use case itself. Now, why do I say that? Okay. The thing is, you have to dig deeper, right? What these use cases don't give us is they don't give us any measurements. They don't give us any sort of specificity that we really need here. And I'm going to offer you a very simple framework for being able to have those type of conversations with a customer, whether or not that customer wants to sort of surface the recommendations and the predictions in Tableau or within Salesforce TCRM. Okay. So here's the thing to bear in mind. The first thing you need from your customer when they say they're interested in predictions is, what's the business outcome that you want to predict? Any time that Tableau CRM generates a model, it always generates one or has to generate one. You have to define this in the light of a goal or a business outcome. And that goal or business outcome can be of two types, namely either a numeric or effectively a Boolean. Okay, numerics, you know, in Tableau terms, it's a continuous variable. Okay, so amount, CSAT, margin, they're all numbers. Okay. The Boolean one is a yes or no, a true or false. Did we win an opportunity or didn't we? Is the customer satisfied or aren't they? Are they going to attrit or aren't they? Right? And analyzing in those terms is actually going to render out a probability. Okay, question there, sorry? No? Okay. So that's your next question to the customer. Dear customer, you know, can you define your business outcome in terms of either a number or a yes or no, a true or false? And so just as an example and some guidance, here are typical ones that we'd use within Tableau CRM. Things like optimal price, optimal discount, customer satisfaction, churn. Churn's a favorite, but churn's a very good example of one of those business outcomes where you have to dig deeper, because customers will always say that they're interested in churn. What you then have to dig into is, okay, dear customer, how do you define churn? What is the measure that you use? Yeah. And then once you have that, there's a kind of framework that you can use to sort of stitch that conversation together and help the customer as well. And there's basically three pillars to it. One is effective. The first is your area of interest. You know, is it sales? Is it marketing? Is it customer service? The second is that goal or business outcome. And the third, and this is where I think the conversation gets really interesting, is asking the customer to tell you what factors within their business they think have a bearing on that business outcome. So I've chosen a sort of a typical sort of Salesforce example here, which is field sales and opportunities and what have you, and looking at those opportunities in the light of minimizing the days to close. Right? It could just as well be maximizing the margin, or whether or not it's going to be one or not. Okay? And let's have a look at the predictors, because following on from that earlier question, the color coding that you'll see there is done deliberately. Okay, things like industry, product family, region all have a bearing, no doubt, on the likelihood of an opportunity to close. But they are what they are. They effectively define, they are parameters for that piece of business, and they cannot be changed. I cannot change the industry, for instance, that an opportunity might be running in. However, things like discount or promotion quite conceivably are within our remit to be able to change. And as such, when we're deploying the model, we define those as actionable variables, because those are the variables that are going to determine the nature of the recommendations that we get back. Is that clear? And I hope you don't think I'm not going to labor the point, but I'm going to relate this back to the example that we were just looking at for AuctionNation, okay? Because if we think about it there, the business outcome was return on a line item, okay? The predictor variables, and I'm making the distinction here between variables which are predictors and those which are actually actionable. The actionable ones are still predictors, but they're actionable as well. The predictor variables were things like make and model, the amount paid to an insurance company, the admin fees. We can't change them. They are what they are. However, things like the actionable variables, I mean, for AuctionNation, it was things like not just the location where they put the car up for auction, you know, Joburg, Cape Town, Durban, and what have you. But even things like the lot number within the actual location. You know, there were certain sort of lots which they felt were, you know, ergonomically more suited to getting bigger crowds and what have you, where they wanted to put the cars, and also the time of day. Okay. And so their kind of three-pillar framework looked like that. The area of interest was auctions, the goal of business outcome was return on a line item, and the predictors were some of the ones that we just discussed there. Okay. So what I'm just want to do here is some of you may recognize this slide, because this is a slide that Francois Zimmerman presented on Monday. But and I'm looking at the platform as a whole here, you know, the Tableau and TCRM platform combined. But what I want to draw your attention to is the area that's circled on the right. We've just looked at an example of embedded analytics.
Peter,
yes,
sorry, we're still seeing the dashboard from Salesforce and not the slides.
Oh, I am sorry. Okay, just bear with me. Now, tell me, what do you see there?
We can see the
Yeah,
slides
I
now.
see it.
Yeah, sorry, I don't quite know what's happening at the moment. I do apologize. So that is the slide I was just talking to.
Okay.
but hopefully it's clear. I mean, this is a whiteboarding exercise that you can go through with your customers. Or it's almost the back of an envelope conversation that you can have over a coffee. Yeah, but it sheds so much light on what the customer wants to do and how you can progress it. So please, I would ask you to think of just those three things. You generally know when you engage with a customer what the area of interest is. Ask them to define a business outcome and to think about what predictors there may be. And one thing about this conversation I have to tell you is that I've quite often found with customers that they really do need to think about this because they haven't thought about their business in this way before, right? I mean, what they will generally give you is the type of use cases that we saw before. Okay, yes, we want to do something with forecasting. We want to do some predictions in forecasting, what have you. But what this allows them and you to do is work in partnership to be that much more specific about it. Okay, and get the clarity that you need to get value from the predictions. Okay. And I'm going to go on into these slides and hopefully show you the slide I meant to initially. I'm reworking one of Francois' slides from Monday. And the part of this that I want to draw your attention to, and this is looking at the platform as the whole, in terms of the capabilities of both Tableau and Tableau CRM. And what we've just looked at is a scenario where we saw embedded analytics. And the great value prop there is that for those users who are, let's say, reluctant users of analytics or are reluctant users of a full-on dashboard which requires some slicing and dicing and some interactions before they can get the answers they want, we've seen a scenario where the answers are effectively delivered to them. And what we can do with TCRM is we can take that a step further still. One of our product VPs in the US uses this great phrase about aggressively minimizing the visual impact of Tableau CRM analytics, which, if you think about it, is quite different from Tableau, which works very much on visual metaphors. But there's some there is some thinking behind this. What I want to show you is the idea of the type of model that we've just seen actually automatically driving action. The scenario we just saw was that the model suggested a recommendation, which the user then went and actioned by changing the location of an auction. Okay. What I'm going to show here, provided I show it correctly, people, please tell me that you're seeing the Salesforce user interface. Please reassure me before I go on and do anything else.
Yeah, we can see it.
Oh, marvelous! Thank you.
Working.
Okay. Right. No prizes for guessing that this demo was put together in Australia. Okay. But let's show, and the scenario here is based around the catering industry and also sort of catering to various restaurants. Okay. And the restaurant that we have in question is Best Pad Thai. And so the scenario here is that for any given restaurant, we have opportunities that can arise in terms of servicing that restaurant with particular products and types of food. And so we see the same kind of pattern, the same kind of paradigm that we've seen before, analytics embedded within the user interface, perhaps comparatively simple, but still with a range of interactivity that will give me the answers that I want when I want them, right? Without me having to do too much work here, and a prediction which tells me that of the actionable variables available to me, contract type may well improve the likelihood of this business to buy fresh products if I set the contract type to 1 year. Okay. Other things about this piece of business are that, for instance, if I look at the sales related to it, I have 3 opportunities already in motion with it. They're at, well, one has been closed, one's at negotiation, the other's at the proposal quote stage. So they're various late stage opportunities. Okay. So going back to this, the requirement here was that, okay, if the likelihood to buy fresh products rose above a certain threshold, then the customer wanted an opportunity to be automatically generated. Okay, no ifs or buts, no recommended actions to take. It would just go ahead and do it. Okay, and so let's see what happens then. Remember, I'd ask you to make a mental note of the fact that we've got 3 opportunities outstanding here. But if we set the contract type to 1 year, we should see the likelihood to buy fresh products increase by 15 percentage points. So let's go to my details. Let's set the contract type to 1 year and save that away. So same process going on here. The amended record is being passed to the model. It's being reassessed against the model, rescored against that model, and you see that its score has gone up by 15 percentage points. Now, what should happen here is that that's taken it above a 65% threshold. Okay, and as a result, when I now go to sales, you notice that the number of opportunities has gone up to 4. Because what has happened is that it has auto-created a fresh opportunity for me. That's been done by Process Builder. It could just as well have been done by a flow. And I've had other situations as well where customers wanted us to detect, for instance, lags or gaps in projections of using consumables on particular hardware. And where there weren't enough opportunities to cover the shortfall, they wanted those opportunities to be automatically created. Okay. But again, it doesn't have to be opportunities, it doesn't have to be leads or anything like that. But be aware that we haven't just got the capability to drive answers to particular questions about data. We've got the ability to action those either manually or in an automated fashion. Any questions on that before I go further? Okay, now I trust that you can see my slides again. Please tell me if you can't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, now, so here's a question. One of the great things, or a possible pushback that you might get from customers, that one of the great things about Tableau is that we sell, in many respects, we sell not just business value, but a user experience. We sell a very particular type of user experience because that user experience has been so finely honed and crafted, and it's just fun and exciting to do. If you have an interest in data and getting more meaning out of it. Tableau CRM, there's a certain difference there in that because of the way that it works, because you actually have to physically move data into the Tableau CRM store, because it's a separate store from core Salesforce, it can be more onerous in that respect, right? We put all sorts of utilities in place, but in terms of customers getting a quick time to value, whenever a customer buys the Tableau CRM full license, my first advice to them, my first guidance to them is also look at the pre-built templates. Now, the idea of templates in analytics and business intelligence is actually nothing new. But I have never seen such a full implementation of the idea. Typically what templates are is just that. They're just templates. They're flat templates. And then they're in no way dynamic. What we mean by templated apps in Tableau CRM, and this is our quick time to value. Okay, once you've switched on Tableau CRM, and the next place to go is one of the templates, because what the templates will do is this. Okay, for each one of the templates that you see here, and you'll see that they're split across particular clouds, They're split also by industry, and they're also split by use case. Is they will take whoever is setting it up through a questionnaire which asks how they want their data to be interpreted. So the situation that you have is that that wizard is being run within the Tableau CRM environment, which is umbilically linked to the configuration that you have in Salesforce, in Sales Cloud or Service Cloud, and is able to detect things about that configuration, i.e., as with almost everything in Salesforce, it is metadata aware. And because it is metadata aware, it will generate, whatever it generates, it will generate in a customer-specific fashion. Okay, it's not a flat template. It's an adaptive template, if you like. So depending on those questions, it will then go away and do a number of things for you. The first is to generate the necessary integrations that will pull data from core Salesforce and put it in the Tableau CRM data store and generate the data sets, not the tables, but the data sets, because it's a very particular data store. So it generates the integrations, it generates the data sets, and then it will actually generate the dashboards. You don't have to build anything. Now, will those dashboards be an exact fit? Possibly not, right? But they're certainly going to give you an 80-20 kind of split there. They're going to give you 80% of the requirement, and sort of kind of the 20% is the stuff where you might have to do some tweaking and some customization on it. But in terms of giving you a quick time to value, there is none of this idea of having to sort of go away into a dark, into a quiet room and organize table schemas and structures and what have you, because Tableau CRM doesn't work that way, right? So if ever a customer wants a quick time to value, I will direct them first to their CRM templates, not least because if there is custom work to do subsequently, that gives us a basis on which to do it. Okay. So I just want to use these last few slides to sort of reassure and perhaps sort of kill a few myths perhaps about Tableau CRM. I've talked about aggressively minimizing analytics within the user interface and everything like that. But that's not to say that if you want to, you can't do full dashboards, because you can. Okay, but part of the gist of this presentation is that they're directed very much at the particular use case and the type of user who may or may not have an appetite for a fully interactive dashboard. And one impression that I'm desperate, and I mean desperate not to make, is that Tableau CRM is only for Salesforce data. Okay. The way to look at it is that Tableau CRM is within the CRM workflow, and therefore what's driving Tableau CRM is where the user wants the analytic to be consumed. That is not to say, however, that the analytic is composed only of Salesforce data. Right? One sort of important point that we perhaps don't sort of emphasize enough, I think, is the fact that the Tableau CRM license will give you 10 billion rows of data storage off the bat, right? Now, I've not yet come across a customer who has 10 billion rows in their transactional Salesforce, right? The intention has always been that there would be a capability, the intention has always been that customers will be able to bring in data from other sources into that physical Tableau CRM data store, okay? And in fact, just about every one of our customers does this, whether it's ERP data, billing data, invoices, stray CSVs, or what have you. They'll bring them into Salesforce. They'll bring them into the Tableau CRM store. Now, it may or may not come via Salesforce. You have that choice and you have that freedom. But the thing to bear in mind is that the data does physically have to be moved. Okay, and this is where there is a distinction architecturally between the way that Tableau works and the way that Tableau CRM works. Tableau is very good at doing remote queries and then persisting the data in Hyper or and so forth. Whereas Tableau CRM, as a general rule, works the other way. I.e., you have to persist the data in the Tableau CRM data store, whether it comes from Salesforce or whether it comes from external data source, and then you're able to query it. Okay. And just a couple of last things then, right? I mean, in terms of looking at Salesforce data, for instance, Tableau could do it. Of course it can. Yes. It doesn't do it in the same way, and it's not going in through the same reporting API, and it's not looking at the same data structures. But yes, it can do it. But the question then is whether you want to recreate all those other things that come as a benefit of being native to Salesforce, things like, you know, the profiles, the row-level security, the role hierarchies, and what have you. Whether you want to recreate those in a remote reporting system, right? So, as a general rule, you see why the idea of the use case and how well you've defined it is so important here. Yeah, particularly when it comes to using predictions. But overall, you know, whether it's one or t'other or both, and there are many situations in which it's both. We have customers, we have joint customers worldwide. Just be clear in general about that use case. So hopefully on that, I'd like to close by saying, you know, if I talked earlier on about the you know, the traditional Tableau mission statement, which is we help people see and understand data. I hope you've seen in the course of this presentation, and apologies for the issues with projection and what have you, that we don't just do that, or we don't just have the capability to do that. There are situations, particularly Salesforce-oriented situations, in which we can help them to action it, not just see that data, but help them to action it or automate it, however they consume or interact with it. So there we go. Time is up. I'd like to thank you all very much for your time and your patience for my ineptitude in dealing with the projections and the slides. But hopefully there were things of value there. And please do, if you get the opportunity, use that survey link there to come back to us and tell us how we can improve. Any questions that anybody would like to ask before I close the meeting?
Hi, Peter. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
So about the, you know, getting ERP data in Salesforce, are we talking about like linking with APIs to get the data from ERP to Salesforce?
Yes, you can do. Now, what you have to bear in mind here, okay, the first thing to bear in mind is you talked about linking data there.
Mm-hmm.
The data has to be physically moved. Okay.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that you will have to take the data out of the ERP
mm-hmm.
and replicate it, copy it, store it in the Tableau CRM data store, right? There are a few situations in which Tableau CRM can do what Tableau does, which is sort of query it remotely, but for ERP data, you're going to have to physically move it. Now, that implies quite strongly that you would either write code to do that, or that you have some middleware, some integration software in place, right? The integration vendors that, for instance, support loading data into the Tableau CRM data store are, for instance, MuleSoft, which is no surprise because it's part of Salesforce. Informatica, Jitterbit, Dell Boomi, Talend. There are a couple of others. What they all have in common, and you were asking about APIs, what they all have in common is that they support and they use what's called the Tableau CRM external data API. And this is what you must use if you want to physically load data into the Tableau CRM data store. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
Not at all.
May I ask a question, Peter?
Of course you can.
So it's mostly about the Tableau partners and how we distribute the Einstein Analytics and Tableau CRM. Is it possible to use it without a Salesforce account?
No.
No. Yeah.
No. What we do, I mean, is effectively the type of license that you need or the minimum viable license that you need is a force.com license, right? That's kind of effectively just the most basic level of platform license, okay?
And
So that's kind of the bad news, right? If you're thinking of a standalone use case. The good news is that in those situations we don't charge for it.
that means that pricing for that license is absolutely free, or what's sort of them for using
Zero.
analytics?
Yes, free. Okay.
Oh, thanks. And I have another question about maybe mostly how Einstein Analytics works. Is that mostly deep learning or AI that analyze the data that we already use? Should we get some data to it to train? Or
Right. Okay. A couple of questions there. Okay. If you're using the terms AI and deep learning, and I think these terms get blurred, it's not deep learning. It's not using neural networks. If you want to know the algorithms that it's using, at the moment, the algorithms it supports are linear and logistic regression, general boosting, XG boosting, and also random forest. Okay. And in those situations where you want it to, it will actually do a tournament of all those algorithms. All right.
yeah, and see that it's self-taught system, and we shouldn't get some data to it.
Well, all you have to do is put together a data set that is representative. Right?
Yeah.
And you often find that can be a challenge, because you will go through a process of trial and error. Now, if you're thinking in terms of the typical sort of paradigm of training set and test data sets, what happens is this, right? You will feed that data set to Einstein Discovery, the Einstein Analytics, okay? What happens as part of its core processing is that it does four passes of that data set and splits it up into four, what it calls K folds, right? So what I mean by that is you got portion 1, 2, 3, and 4. So for its first pass, it will treat portions 1, 2, and 3 as the training data set, and portion 4 as the test data set. For the next pass, it will take portions 2, 3, and 4 as the training data set, and then 1 becomes the test data set, and so on and so forth. It just cycles through that. And what it actually gives you back, if you want to look at the metrics of the model, is the result of each of those K folds. So it effectively cross-validates itself quite rigorously. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I see it. Thank you for answering, and the great meeting you met.
Oh, I'm glad you think
Thank you very much.
The issues with the projection. I mean, I hope that's clear. I mean, really, this is very exciting technology, but people can get sort of carried away with the technology. But there's a very simple, business conversation behind it, which is so important to establish in the first place. Organizations should always go into this with a clear goal in mind, a clear business outcome in mind, rather than an interest in the technology for its own sake.
Oh, thanks.
Any more questions there, please? And thank you for these questions. I always like them. All right. If there's no more questions, I'd direct you again to the survey link. But in the meantime, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for your patience and your participation. So